Independent Dealer Podcast hosts Luke Godwin and Jeff Watson, a podcast by dealers for dealers. Here we go.
All right, guys, welcome to the Independent Dealer Podcast live recording session, coming to you from TIADA in Round Rock, Texas. Very special episode today. We are live, Luke, live studio audience.
How about it? Let's hear it. Well, today we've got a topic that is on everybody's mind. You know, it was funny. I think Teresa called us in March, and she said, we'd like to do a lot of podcasts. That's great. And she's like, well, what topic do you want to do? And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do. And so March, if y'all remember back, we could buy cars, right? Anybody have any problems buying cars, March? Not really, right? Well, then all of a sudden, everything broke loose. We can't buy cars for a month or two. Well, before that, we said, let's do a panel about sourcing cars in a different manner during COVID or post-COVID. We all thought it would be post-COVID. By now, that's not. So today we have two great panelists that discuss different ways to buy cars. I will let them introduce themselves because they know themselves better than I know them. First, we got Dan.
Yeah, hey guys, Danny Zaslowski. I'm in Kansas City. I have a single point independent store. We do about 200 retail a month and 100 wholesale a month. And I've been in the business since I was a kid.
Awesome. All right, next we have Chad.
Yeah, so Chad Pennington, Coast to Coast Motors in Houston and also in Oklahoma. We have 7 retail locations. We do primarily buy here, pay here, although we're getting into some point of sale at one of our, maybe I guess hybrid stores. So, kind of like Danny, I've been basically in this business most of my life. I bought my first car when I was 7 years old, so it's just kind of in my blood, I guess you could say. So I really enjoy it.
That's the thing because all of us have been in dealerships probably since we were born almost. Jeff, not so much. Really?
About 15, 20 years.
Oh, well, I mean, you're about 25. All right. Yes, so we were buying. Just a quick aside there. My grandfather owned a Ford store. And in a small town Ford store in the early 1980s, I mean, it was rough. It was a bad situation. Well, the building was so bad that they had buckets in the showroom floor catching water when it would rain. It rains a lot in South Carolina. Well, I was in a playpen on the showroom floor, next to Mustangs and F-150s with buckets of rain. Anyway, it was a tough time. So today, sourcing's hard, and we've got to get down to the way to buy. So we've got a couple topics we're going to talk to both about, then we're going to break it out. And you can also submit questions via the app, right? Can you get that?
Yeah, so that'll be the format, guys. We've got a couple questions we're going to go over. You can submit questions via the app, and you can also raise your hand. This is a panel discussion. We want you guys to be able to ask questions. The whole context for our podcast is dealers helping dealers. So this is all about that conversation and how we can educate each other. So when we get to that point, raise your hand, ask questions. I know these guys can take any hard question, they can answer it. We'll just divert the hard ones to them, we'll take the easy ones.
And it is not about picking on an auction or auction source or CRs or arbitration. That's not what we're here for. We're here to learn how to buy cars the right way. Okay? First question.
So the question we're going to go to Chad, what do you see the future of sourcing look like? I think your traditional channels are brick and mortar, let's say, and some digital stuff. Where do you see that going? Where do you see that opportunity in those avenues? And maybe talk to us about some of the pitfalls. We know sometimes basing our purchases off someone else's CR can be a little bit dangerous, Where do you see those advantages and disadvantages?
No, it's good. So, as you mentioned, we're pretty old school when it comes to purchasing traditionally, and we do a lot of auction purchases, a lot of brick and mortar, but we also do a lot of online, especially at the beginning of COVID. We had to really pivot and start looking at the other sources, whether it was backlog or ACV or different things, and we have a lot of success there. But I believe for us to be successful, and this is just speaking for us, I think we have to be, if you're a baseball fan, you've probably heard of the term a 5-tool player. I think in our sourcing, especially in today's environment, we've got to be able to do everything. I think we have to be able to be at the auction physically, whatever that means, whatever it looks like. I think we have to be, in front of the public, like what Danny's gonna talk about. I think we have to be online, whether that's, you pick one source that you like, or maybe it's all of them. But I think we have to have that mentality of, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to source the enough inventory that I need to, not just survive, but thrive and succeed. And that's kind of the attitude that we've taken is, especially at the beginning of COVID, a lot of dealers said, I don't know what this is looking like, these prices are going crazy, I'm just gonna sit here and wait this out. And we did that for about a week.
Yeah. So are you saying the days of showing up to the auction on Friday and filling up 2 carriers, that's not there?
No, I used to do that years ago, and it was, I show up, and I spend all day at the auction, but I can look at 30 or 40 cars.
Right.
And that's just not gonna happen anymore.
And can you be good at every aspect of buying? Can we be good online? Can we be good at the auction? Can we be good at buying off the street? Or should we have every tool in the kit, but know that we're really good at some areas and not others?
Yeah, I think you gotta be semi-proficient in a lot of them, maybe not all of them. But I think it definitely has to be diversified. I've got, a couple buyers who are phenomenal in the lane, and they know exactly who to buy from, and probably more so not to buy from, as far as, the marketers there to sell. And then I've got another guy who's really excellent about buying online. I buy online, and, so I think we have to be diversified in that and kind of have a mixed bag. But I don't know that you can be an expert in all of them, but you definitely have to find, what works for you. We were at the panel the other day, or yesterday, at the round table, and I thought it was really cool how, this guy is like, I'm really successful here, and this guy over here is, I'm really successful here, and I like this on platform, and I hate that one. But so I think you have to figure out, what works best for you and what you're good at.
Yeah, 100%. Danny, same question to you. You're an expert in sourcing cars from individuals and off the street. Are you focused mainly on that, or do you buy from auctions as well? How do you see this moving forward?
So a little bit of both. So I'll tell you a quick story. My dad, we're immigrants, my dad came over in '79, and when he got into the car business in the mid '80s, in the late '80s, early '90s, you guys remember when Nextel phones came out? My dad bought some Nextel phones, and he said, I'm gonna go pass them around to a couple new car stores, and he convinced them. He said, when you're trading for a car, page me, I'll tell you what it's worth, and I'll come buy it, and I'll buy everything, the good, bad, the ugly. And at the time, we called it WAR, wholesale, auction, retail. So wholesale, if we're gonna wholesale to another dealer, auction if we're gonna auction, retail if we're gonna retail it. And so early on, we figured out if we can create these partnerships and buy cars from other dealers and then buy in packages, move money around, and then sell it, we'd have some strategy there. So we started doing that, and we found out also that there were a bunch of power sports stores, and we do this to this day. Harley Davidson stores, RV stores, they trade for cars all the time. And so we buy it all. And he taught me as a kid, if they don't make money, we don't make money. So we paid for things what they're worth, but it was still less expensive than going to the auction. But my dad continued to go to the auction, and I've never liked it. I pretended to like it when I was a kid, and I just felt stupid. I felt stupid because I'd have to raise my hand and be the last guy paying the most, competing with other experts. And so about 6 years ago, unfortunately, my dad had a stroke. He's still pretty good, but it took him out of the game for buying. And I decided I'm not gonna continue doing this auction thing. So we created a vehicle buying center, and I'll talk more about it. But today we buy about 120 cars a month directly from the public, and then and I've got a small team doing that. And we still buy a little bit at the auction, but still have the dealer network.
So both of y'all have teams of buyers, right? Okay. And do you expect a certain buyers to buy a certain amount? Are y'all both managing that team of buyers? How does that look in your dealership?
Yeah, so we create a buying plan, pretty much month to month, sometimes week to week based on the need. And, so like I said, we have a team of buyers. We have, a guy in Oklahoma that buys for us there, and a couple of guys, I guess technically 3 in Houston that will purchase for us. And so our plan is as localized as possible. So for Houston, for instance, we attempt to source all inventory in Houston. We're pretty successful there. We try to do the same thing in Oklahoma, but the inventory supply is not as great there, so we actually have to source out of Houston. So, but we make a buying plan, pretty much every month. Here's what we expect to buy. Here's what the need is. But just as with anything, sometimes if our need is let's say 70 in a week, sometimes we buy 30 because especially these days, that's what's there. That's the supply of inventory that's out there. And some weeks it's 100 or plus. And so we just kind of ride those waves and reassess, especially now, every week.
And Danny, how many people do you manage to buy? Is everybody buying at your store? How does that work?
So we have kind of a hybrid model. So we still, like I said, we buy maybe 5 cars a week at the auction, not that many, mainly because we sell some stuff there and we happen to see something. But we have a vehicle buying center with 1 manager, currently 4 agents. I just hired about 4, and each agent is required to buy between 20 and 30 cars per month directly from the public. And the manager manages those people. And then they get leads, and those leads are either generated inbound. We have a way that we market to the public that we buy cars, and we find these avenues, email marketing campaigns, social media, and so forth, and ingest those. And then we go out now to buy cars directly from the public, Facebook, AutoTrader, Cars.com, anything that has private party listings on it. And then we do some third parties like KPP ICOs and stuff like that. But those are, but we track. This is really, I will tell you, the biggest advantage that I found in the last few years is tracking it. And so you guys all use DMSs. Raise your hand if you use a DMS, cool. All right, so this is a little lesson I had to learn. Know that the DMS is malleable, right? So it's not like fixed, meaning you can find a line in the DMS where it's like, cool, I'm going to use that line to track this thing as long as it is connected to reporting. So I use Reynolds, which is like the oldest curmudgeonliest system. And in Blue Screen, there's this thing called 4008, line 19 is status and location. And so there's this other line called weight. We don't care about weight. We don't use weight. However, it is a reportable line. So for dynamic reporting, I can create reports. And this is something that I'll tell you, open our eyes. So we created a report and identified 1 as an auction buy, 2 as a trade, 3 as a dealer network purchase, and 4 as a vehicle buying center purchase, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. And so when we stroke a check for a car and it goes into the DMS, we put in the line weight 1, 2, 3, or 4. Auction, trade, dealer network, or DBC. Then, at any given time, or at the end of the month, we can run 1 of 2 reports. And so it's an acquisition by channel report. So we look at sold inventory. So in a given month, say in the month of June, we sold 200 cars. How many vehicles sold that were purchased from auction, trade, dealer network, or DBC? What was the average turn? What was the average gross? Front, back, whatever metrics I want. Then I can do the exact same thing on in-stock inventory. Of the inventory I have, what inventory am I sitting on that was purchased at auction, trade, BBC, or dealer network? And pay plans are then are tied to that, right? So my BBC, the manager is tied to that pay plan from front gross of what he creates for the store. So then you can see that becomes a little bit culturally ingrained in the way that we do acquisition, because we can immediately see that, okay, we're making $900 on the front per copy on an auction buy, making $3,200 on a BBC acquisition. Where are we going to spend our time?
So it sounds like, Danny, guys, if you guys have questions, submit them via the app, or we're going to open up for questions pretty soon. But it sounds to me like you're treating the buying process the same way we've always treated the selling process, right? We're tracking every single lead, we're tracking sales, we're tracking grosses, we're tracking how that lead came in, which is our most profitable referral source. We do all that on the selling side. We've never done it on the buying side, right? We don't mirror the backside of our dealership the same way we do the front side of our dealership. But it sounds like if you're expecting one purchasing agent to buy 20 to 25 cars a month, that's what we expect from our sales, right? And I'm assuming you give them a budget, an advertising budget to make that happen. So what an interesting shift in paradigm, guys, to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to treat my acquisition team and the guys buying my cars the same way as rock stars. I'm going to treat them like royalty, the same way I treat my top salesmen, right?
Are you paying commission as well? I mean, like we would pay commission to a salesman?
Yeah. Yeah, so so a BBC agent makes a flat, either $2,000 or $3,000 a month, and then they get $100 per car acquired, and it's a split a deal with another BBC agent. Manager gets a base plus usually about $20 a car purchase from the department, and then the manager gets a percentage of front gross of the vehicles that were purchased by his department that sold in a given month. Make sense?
Yeah.
It's a lot, right? It's like
So we're on the sales side of it.
What's that?
You're doing the same thing you're doing on the sales side.
Yeah, exactly right, yeah. And so,
That was just one.
yeah, that's the point. And somebody asked me this the other day, it's like, do you run a P&L? Because aren't you spending like, I know how much I'm spending on my department and personnel and all that kind of stuff, and it comes out to be between $220, $2 to $220 per acquisition. But keep in mind, my average gross per copy is up like $1,700 plus $500 in transportation I don't have to pay, plus I don't have to pay post-sale inspection fees, plus this I did not expect, reconditioning is half of what it would be on an auction buy, because I'm not buying other people's headaches. So I'm buying vehicles that I have the ability to pre-negotiate reconditioning, get a vehicle that I can be proud of, spend time with it, and then there's some other cool marketing stuff that I'm doing that I'll
So, I'm gonna go to Chad right for this. Has your transportation expense gone to zero?
Yeah, we don't transport.
Okay, Chad, I spend, probably everybody in the room spends an enormous amount of money on transporting cars from, I bought a car in Houston this morning, so it's like, I'm in South Carolina, so that's $600 out the window right now, right? So Chad, how much do you spend, because you're buying for dealerships in Oklahoma and Texas.
Right.
Being centrally located, if I were you, I'd be buying in California, I'd be buying in South Carolina as well. So how much do you spend per copy when it comes to transportation?
Yeah, so if we buy, regional, like buy in Houston and ship from Oklahoma, we're spending, $3 to $350, per unit to get there. It used to be $250, but as we know, transportation costs is very long to the road. So, we attempt to buy as much regionally as we can, or if, let's say we're buying for Texas, we'll buy on, backlog ECV, whatever, and, of course, that shipping's in there, so, we don't necessarily see that cost, the cost of the car, but yeah, we definitely do, we definitely do have to show.
Chet, do you say your compensation plan for your buyers? How are they paid? Did you mention that?
No, they're all on salary.
They're all on salary. Okay, good guy, good buys, bad buys, everything's salary.
Yeah, everything's salary.
Any bonuses at all? Oh, no. Not paying on gross of the car, whether it's good or bad or ugly, it's what it is.
No, it is what it is. I know it's a little bit of a unique situation, but, both of these guys have been buying, actually, all 3 or 4 of them have been buying for decades.
Yep.
And so, they're highly experienced and skilled at what they do.
What is your average recon cost? How long does it take you from the time they finish purchasing to it's ready for your lot?
Yeah, so something that an interesting dynamic, and that's something that we're gonna look at, is we're actually seeing a higher recon cost on average from the stuff we're buying online versus in person. And I know some of that has to do with our buyers and their abilities at the auction, and sometimes, if you actually run the report, the guy that has the highest recon online, buying online is actually me, so I'm trying to stay away from that as much as I can. I'm not the best buyer anymore, which is fine with me. But what was your second?
So time to line and average recon cost.
Right. Yeah, so it kind of varies, depending on, if it was on backlog, time for transportation. But once we get it, it's a pretty quick turnaround. We create kind of a fast lane for those new purchases. And so, that expectation, they're on a lot within 24 hours.
Wow.
Not always, depending on the backlog, but we have a huge shipment of new purchases coming out. We know we can pump those out real quick. So we'll shove those kind of through the fast lane, because they typically don't need near as much as, being a buyer here, we have repos, and so those take a little bit more care to get ready.
You have a certain CR that you buy in, or do you buy across the board? Or you just say, I'm not buying anything below 3, I'm not buying anything above 4, or you have a slot? Or?
When I used to buy a lot from, Manheim online, pretty much 3.0 or higher was where I wanted to stay. But anymore, we don't really buy Manheim online anymore. Most of our online purchases are ACV or backlog, something like that, car often. And we just have certain standards. So like we're not gonna buy anything with lower engine noise, we're not gonna buy anything with structural damage or major body damage. I mean, cosmetic stuff, it's not a big deal. We can take care of those things. So we just kind of stick to rigid standards, as far as that goes, and not necessarily a scale.
What I find so interesting is I think we all know that if we're in the lanes and we can, touch it, drive it, taste it, we're going to get the wool pulled over our eyes maybe 1 out of 20 times, 1 out of 30 times we might get fleeced on a bad buy. And it has so much to do with the inspection, the CR. I start to think that the online platforms like your Backlot and your ACV, totally drastically different experiences two dealers could have, right? Some people hate ACV, some people love it, some people love Backlot. I'm starting to follow the inspector. And when it has, Michael Q as the inspector on this thing, and I know I can trust his inspections, then I can bid on his cars with confidence, no matter whose platform I'm on. It doesn't matter the brand name, it's that inspector. It's like,
I think you're right on there. It's a similar scenario at the auction. When I used to buy heavy, what our buyers do now is, they're based on bad experiences. They're definitely remarketers or dealers that they bought from that we won't touch anymore. We don't even go in the lane. We don't even tempt ourselves with those inventory because we know that they're about to rebuff. So So I think you're right on. I think that's a good point.
Questions? Yeah, anybody got any questions? We'll try to do this and go to Danny and talk about buying on the street. Any questions?
I got a question for Danny.
Yeah.
Danny, do you have your purchasing center, is it on your location of your retail lot, or is it separate? How does that work?
Yeah, it's in my store. So you walk in, so the experience.
Danny, I'm sorry, let's just go over how you have it set up. That might save a lot of questions to start with.
You bet. So here's the process. What's your name?
My name's Steve.
Steve. So if you were my customer, you would arrive at my car dealership and we'd greet you and we'd say, what brings you in? Actually, when you call, we ask you, are you calling to buy a car or sell a car? So it's ingrained in our process. And when you were to come in, you're greeted, and then you say, hey, I'm here to sell my car, no problem. And traditionally, we had preset an appointment. We have a digital board. If you just happen to be driving by and sell a car, that's fine too. And then somebody comes out to reach you and then gives you an intake form. That intake form asks you questions like, how many keys do you have? How would you rate the mechanical condition, cosmetic condition of your car? What's the most you would take? What's the least you would take? What's your payoff? Who's it through? All that kind of stuff. In the meantime, while you're filling that out, we're driving the car. I'd say about 20-30% are taking it to our equipment offsite service center, like half a mile away. Sometimes we'll run it through there if we think it needs to, and then we'll have a look at it, then we'll come back. And then the appraiser will put it into, we use software called VinQ. They'll scan it, put it in, they'll appraise the vehicle, and then we sit down with you. We try to, so first of all, if we were talking to you over the phone, we always give highest and best first. We used to do lowest, where we'd say we give you 16 grand for your car and then try to convince you that was a good offer. We've stopped doing that because it's just a stupid approach. And we started saying, okay, cool, we think we can give you 18 for your vehicle, seeing that you may have listed it for 19 or 18.5, but that's really highest and best. Then when you come in, we can see, all right, it may need tires, or it may have this scratch, or whatever. It's a lot easier to devalue the vehicle authentically in person than try to steal over the phone. Then when you come in and we agree on a price, if it's a cash deal, we write a check on the spot. If you owe money, then we give you enough paperwork to make you feel safe, and then we give you a check within 10 to 14 business days. We pay off the vehicle, and then we do an exit interview, always, and we ask, would you mind if we take a little video of you telling us about your experience? And we give you a form to fill out in person, and this is, I think, one of my favorite things about it. We ask you, is there anything you would like the next owner to know about your vehicle that made you proud about it? And so they fill it out, and then that goes to my inventory manager, and then it goes up on the BDP in the comments that says notes from the previous owner, and then we insert it in there. And then we take that video, put it up on social, and use it to drive traffic to our sell-to page. And I will tell you that is probably one of my biggest lead providers.
That's powerful, right?
Yeah. So So then we'll try to make you a celebrity and get it out there and drive more traffic. So.
Do you have a software tool that calculates a valuation tool that they can get a value online? Is that what VinQ is?
That is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we use VinQ for that. We also, this is the other thing, like, remember I told you there's inbound, outbound, third party? So inbound is just that, it's inbound. You have to, what's your dealership name?
Midtown Motor Company.
Midtown Motor Company. Buy a URL, sell to Midtown Motor Company. That's it. That's your URL. Sell to Midtown Motor, or Midtown Motor Company buys cars, whatever. That's the landing page. You gotta give your consumer a place to land, right? Then, because right now, if anybody tells me their URL and I say, well, I want to sell you my car, where do I go? Most of your websites don't have a place for me to actually land and sell you my car, right? So they land there, the software gives them a value on their vehicle, and then it puts it into it's a private party acquisition CRM. So that's where we manage all that, and that's where we can manage all that stuff. And then on the outbound side, we collect all of the Auto Trader, Facebook, Craigslist, Cars.com, eBay. They all land in this place, and then we through the system we communicate directly out to people and set appointments and communications and blah blah blah, and it's all tracked by individual, and so we can see their conversions from opportunities to connections to appointments to acquisitions.
Are you buying a certain price range of cars, certain year? Are you buying everything, or is there a limit? Or
So that's a really cool point. So here's what I'll tell you. I'm buying stuff that I would have never bought at the auction, either A, because I wouldn't have had a chance to buy it, because somebody else would have raised their hand and got to it before me, or taking a chance. I bought a Maserati the other day that I made like 11 grand on that. Some Highline guy would have paid. It was a 15 or like 40,000 miles. So it wasn't super expensive, but I bought it right. I have a 10,000 mile Plymouth Prowler on my lot right now that I bought off the street. Yeah, yellow with flames on it. So
I've seen one of those about 15 years.
I know. So my average price car I'm selling is about 18 grand. And my lot is probably, I was sharing this earlier, 30% in that $6,000 to $12,000 price range, 50% in the 12 to 20, and then the remaining in the $20,000 to $50,000 price range.
So $18,000 retail price?
18,000 retail.
Are you doing special finance by your
Keep your hand on
Okay, we gotta cut you off for a second. So there's got to be more questions out there.
Yeah.
You guys are retailer, or you do any kind of buy here, pay here?
You were very good at buy here, pay here.
Yeah, mostly buy here, pay here, but we do some retail. We have one store that we do, hire from, and I love this model, by the way, and it's something that we plan. I'm already making some plans to adopt. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to scale it. I do believe it is scalable, but for buy here, pay here, we have at least for our operation, I know it's all over the map for buy here, pay here dealers or who I talk to, but we have a buy list and we have a no buy list, and our buy list is about this long, put next to each other, and our no buy list is about this long, right? And so, we found, what works great for us, works great for our consumer, and, what we're comfortable with buying mechanically, and so, I think this is something that we can scale for our business, but I think it works very, very well for retail.
Danny, can you build a program for this only targeting certain cars? So do you have to buy everything, or you can just say, okay, I've got a buy list and that's what we're gonna go after?
Yeah.
Can you do that?
So our software, it gives us, there's a picture with an airplane with a check mark through it. We call that our no-fly zone. So the saying we have around the car dealership is the better it gets. So we try not to keep our people stupid. And what I mean by that is our VBC agents, we want them to be able to appraise the vehicle, right? Our salespeople, we want them to be able to appraise the vehicle. And that takes time, especially when you're hiring a 17, 18-year-old person to get used to understanding how to appraise the vehicle. We get them to get comfortable with the range first, and then we get them closer and closer and closer. Regardless, the desk has the final say. So the desk has the final say of whether the vehicle is bought or not, right? But the agents are responsible to make those appraisals. The software gives them the range. The software gives them the ability to understand comps, whether you're looking at retail transactions or wholesale transactions or similars or whatever. But then your question was.
Can we
Yes.
hold on?
Yes, so as we learn what we want, what we don't want, we make in the software, we keep a no-fly list and a targets list, and it filters out those vehicles, and it puts color for temperature to understand, like, go after that vehicle, we want it, versus something that we don't, like a Jag, that I don't care about.
What software are you using? Is it proprietary or what software are you using?
Can I share?
I don't know if we can share that 100%.
I've
Find
said it a
Danny.
few times, but you can find them in the
Yeah,
extra.
find Danny in the expo hall. Chris, did you have a question?
Yeah, so from the time that the customer walks in and the time that they leave, we do the same thing, but I'm just curious, how much time do you spend from the time they walk in to the time they leave to actually purchase?
To purchase? So let me give you conversions first, and then it'll make sense. So inbound.
Title.
Yeah. Inbound leads convert at like 20%. All right. So if they're knocking on your door, they want to sell their car. So as long as you can appraise it and like don't screw with them, just give them a real offer, talk to them, convert, blah blah blah. You'll convert them at like 20%, and usually they'll do it the same day. And so we're spending at most an hour. And it really title people can be a total pain in the ass, right? So it depends on your process in titling. How quickly can they write a check? How quickly will they process it? Will they fight you on it? All that kind of stuff. So your relationship with your back office is important. But with the consumer, it's really pretty straightforward. Outbounds converted about 12% because you're knocking on their door and then working to get them in, assuming that you want the car. But then in store, roughly the same process. Outbounds tend to have a little bit more desire to get like another offer. We have a CarMax literally across the street, and I have a sign that says we'll pay up to $250 more than CarMax. So we're serious about highest and best, which is still significantly cheaper than raising my hand at the auction, right? And then third parties like KBB and so forth convert about 4%.
I'm in the same boat with you, I have a CarMax up the street.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that question. I didn't know this before, but having CarMax across the street has to help your numbers.
Oh,
when it
for
comes
sure.
to buying. Okay.
Yeah.
How significant do you think that is?
So before early in our vehicle buying history, I used to ask people, have you gotten a bid anywhere else? And they're like, oh, no, of course not. And then I get in their car, and in their passenger seat is a bid from CarMax.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, cool. And so I go for a drive, come back, and I appraise the vehicle, and if I can give them $50 more, $100 more, yeah, I think I'll take it.
It's so funny. How many of us out here have gotten in a car that somebody wanted to trade in and they have a CarMax offer in there? It happens every day.
I had a fake one sit there.
That'd be interesting to do that.
Question.
I got a fake one.
There's a question on the app from David. He wants to know how many of those people convert to sales? They come in thinking they're just going to trade in the car, sell it to you, but they actually end up trading it in on something else.
So that's something we measure in the software and in the DMS. Remember I was telling you about that 1, 2, 3, or 4? So 15% is the answer. That's kind of what we aim for. But there's a big thing here that we learned, and we call it motivators. So as consumers driving down the street, seeing a car dealership, we know what they want. They want to sell a car. When a dealership calls you to buy a car or you hear an ad, the motivator for the dealership is they want to buy your car. But as experts, we've got to think about what is the motivator for the consumer and how can we solve that problem. And so when you're talking to your consumers, whether through email marketing, social media, television, whatever you're doing, think about their motivators. So an example is they need money. That is probably the most common answer. But sometimes they just want to stop looking at it. Sometimes they need to get out from debt. Sometimes they want to no longer make a payment on it. Sometimes they need to get out of it because it was their wife's car and they're not together anymore. So be curious about what the motivator is, and then stop talking about everything else and only solve that problem. And once you do it that way, your conversion will go up.
Interesting.
A comment that I can make, another one is that a lot of people are transferring or moving somewhere else, is what I'm finding. And then the other one that comes in is a lot of people go to the car dealerships, and we're all independent dealers for the most part. At the end of the day, the new car stores still hit them pretty hard for their cars, whereas we're going to pay more money for them. That's the biggest thing I can tell you.
And that's very interesting. The highest and best first.
Highest and best first.
That's got to be a brain switch. It takes us a long time to to get over, because everybody knows that somebody comes in for a trade for the past 100 years of the car business, you want to hit them at the bedrock.
We buy cars from people that are trading at a new car store. We did an email marketing campaign that said 3 second opinions. So, we buy sell us your car, then go buy, I don't have a new car store, so then go buy a new car. But give me a chance to buy your car and give you a better deal than what they're gonna give you on trade.
Because so many times it's thousands of dollars more. Question
Do
of
you
it.
ever see when you're doing that, people talking about the value of tires when they trade it in?
Yeah, you bet.
All the time.
So that's in the offer. When they get an offer, if you guys actually just write down these two URLs, sell2countryhill.com. And if you can do an offer on there, just use the word test as your last name, please. Otherwise, they're gonna blow you up. So when you fill it out, just do test as your last name. You'll see what it looks like. That offer will give you 3 options. It'll give you what we'll pay for it, what you can get on trade with the sales tax credit, and what you can sell it on your own for. So, and then that's the conversation we have, is say, hey, this is what we can buy it for you for, but hey, you can sell it on your own. Here's the demand, here's what the average time online is for that vehicle, and so yeah, that's absolutely part of the conversation.
I have one more comment, and then when
Could you just repeat that URL?
Sell2countryhill.com. Sell to country, like, yeah, the second URL is if you go to YouTube and type in sell to Country Hill Motors. You'll see all of our videos that we do, our video testimonials, our commercials, and I'm just saying, like, borrow, beg, steal, take it, make it your own, because I want you guys to win.
Interesting. I like it.
Any other questions from the audience?
Okay.
Can you guys talk to us about, what about the book values? I always have such an interesting thing, like, do we need to switch the paradigm? Because we all think we're paying too much for cars. Is it possible to pay too much for a car, or are you just paying what the market is, and we just need to adjust and realize that the $5,000 car is now a $7,000 car, and our $3,000 car is now a $5,000 car. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I don't mean to be rude, but I would just say put on your big boy pants and do what it takes to be successful. Because, within reason. So we chased, let me just kind of give you an example. We chased the 2012 F-150 with 120,000 miles from 15 grand up to 23 grand because that's just what we had to do to buy that truck. I'm not saying that's a great long-term plan, but at the end of the day, we're in the business to sell cars and make money. And if we don't have them, then what are we here for? So we just took the mentality that, now if we just go to the auction, during COVID, with all this inventory shortage and hold our hands up, no. We made the wisest and smartest decisions. One of the things that we had to do was really branch out, and we went to auctions that we sometimes never even heard of before, or didn't think there was a good opportunity to buy, and we went to all kinds of different places. So, but there was a line, we said, okay, we're going to chase these up to this point, but we've got to stop somewhere, and maybe we had to, so we had to step back, a year or two on our average years. We had to go up a little bit in the miles, back off a little bit on, some of our conditions, on the condition of the vehicles, and just kind of roll with it.
So if it's the right car, the book value really doesn't matter. Is that kind of what we're?
In a lot of ways, I mean, for us, we have the advantage of biker painters, so we price everything cost plus, and so, we have a very specific buying plan, very specific types of units that we will purchase. For us, it's heavy trucks and SUVs, and so if it fits in our wheelhouse, we know that we can get a high down payment on this vehicle, and it's going to sell. Then there's obviously there's a limit, but we're going to do whatever it takes within reason.
Danny, is your thought process different because you're not paying that professional fee? I think that's what you call it. You're not paying that professional fee, but the other way around that, consumers know how dire we are to have cars right now, and they know the book value. They can educate themselves just like the mindset.
So this kind of goes back a little bit to your question. So we, again, within our software, my dad loved looking at MMR transactions, right? And I always thought, gosh, that's a silly number to look at because it's like a total lagging indicator because those are 30 days old and those decisions are based off of like 30 days prior to that when somebody had a gut feeling. So it's old data. Within our system, we look at the retail transaction data. What's that vehicle leaving the internet for, right? What's that last price online? So I'll give you an example. So Steve, if you were to come into my dealership and I'd say, how much do you want for the car? You'd say, I want 19 grand. Cool, how did you come up with that number? Well, that's what I see them going online for. Excellent. I look at the vehicle, I see what they're asking online for, and then I can see what they're leaving the internet for. And I can show you that and say, oh, people are asking 20 or 19,000, but they're actually leaving the internet for 17.8 average. Average price drop on this car is $1,200. And then from there, I can help you understand that your vehicle's worth less, plus it needs this, or whatever, right? So retail transactions, history is our number one indicator we look at for acquisition.
That's a whole nother podcast about how to do that. So books don't matter to you. It is retail transaction. Does that correlate to book value at all anymore? Or are they disconnected?
Book values currently are high, so we don't do buy here, pay here. We're traditional, or we do subprime, but it's through indirect lending. But and we have a 60-something% finance penetration. So we've never really looked at book values for acquisition.
It's all retail, I guess, prior to week retail transactions, something to that effect. Interesting. Does that bring up any more questions? We got more.
So what about cost, like between Chad and you, Danny? Because I mean, to go from not having a buying team and to go from having a software paying for that and the time that you have to spend to buy those cars from the public, it's got to be 2 or 3 more time consuming than buying. When I go home, I'm on my phone buying online, put my bids in over the weekend or whatever, pick up 30 cars versus the time that it takes to pick up 30 cars from the public.
I don't think it's not a commitment. It's a commitment. It's a different mindset.
It's a different mindset, but I mean, I have 4 full-time people, manager and 3 agents that are buying all day long, and they're using the desk to communicate back and forth on bids. And so, I mean, it's part of the machine, I guess, is the best way I can describe it. We don't really go. The only auction I ever buy in anymore is Fort Lauderdale, Manheim, because they have what I call wannabes. A lot of cars that look really good. There's a big saturation of BMWs and Mercedes with 40, 60,000 miles, and I can buy them cheaper there. So I'll buy some cars out of Fort Lauderdale, Manheim, but that's about it.
Yeah, I got so many questions, but we don't have time.
Yeah, we're running a little short. Well, maybe a tip, and one of the things that I've done buying online to save time is just, we can start, as dealers. Some of us are the buyers, some of us are the office staff, some of us are the salesmen, but we can take those little steps on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist and throw out the, hey, I'm really interested in your car, it looks great, the condition, the price, can you meet me at my mechanic shop to have it inspected? And that's been the line I've used, and most of the people, they're very accommodating. Great, where's your mechanic shop? Oh, well, it's Four Seasons Auto off Red Hills Parkway. Meet me there. I mean, it's my dealership. Meet me there. And they don't have a problem. They come up, you build a rapport. Because I'm not able to drive the county and chase down cars for 5 hours every day. I think I'll breathe. So being able to bring them into you is so key, I think, to buying off the street. And I know there are dealers that they have a trailer and a truck and a briefcase full of cash, and they send someone out to drive the county and pick up cars. But
that's really big.
But if you're a small guy and you don't have the time, start with the little, just throw out the lines. Hey, bring it by. And those guys start showing up.
Because they come to us.
Yeah, you love it, you stroke them a check.
Yeah, sorry, I
you
didn't
home in an Uber.
And just remember, it's every process that everybody has in here takes time. You may not think that you buy online takes time, but if you're doing it at home, it takes time from your family. If you're doing it in your office, it takes time from you working on the business. So every process you have takes time. If you're willing to put in the time to build a process that Danny has, to build a process that Chad has, then you can, once that process is up and going, you can remove yourself from that process. So just remember that as well. Any more questions? Because we about have to wrap up here.
I have one more quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're buying, are you always buying specifically for something that you will retail, or sometimes you're buying and thinking I'm gonna put it, because I'll buy stuff and sign
Yeah.
and put it on the auction thing, it's probably not the greatest, if I go pay your car, but
Yeah.
if I can put it and make some money.
I will tell you, so because I got the luxury of looking at it, the software system, and seeing like hundreds upon hundreds of private party cars. We're traditionally only buying for retail. Sometimes we'll buy a Sienna minivan with 190,000 miles that we know will bring the bank at the auction, right? Stuff like that. But 99% of the time we're buying retail. But somebody can clean up wholesale because there is so much inventory out there that is in that really nice wholesale space. But no, unless it doesn't, for some reason, doesn't pass inspection or something like that, we're buying for retail.
And Chad, how about you? Is it just strictly buying for the retail lot? Only mistakes go back to wholesale, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of time either way, right?
No, yeah, pretty simply, it is locked in the way. This is what we do best, and that's what we're gonna focus on.
Great.
Yeah, on the reason.
And that's the only stuff I send to auction are my mistakes.
Any parting wisdom that you want to give Chad, and then we'll go to Danny for that?
I think for us, well, and this is for the group too, the pandemic obviously changed so many things. And the used vehicle inventory, well, actually whether it be new or used, just talking to the buyer this morning, he's got a lot of connections in the new car business, and one of the things we're talking about is this pandemic has changed the car environment, and most likely has changed it for a very long time. We're not talking about 6 months or a year, we're talking about years down the road. And so what that means for me and for our operation is we're probably going to have to shift our mindset, and we're going to have to get used to doing things that we're probably a little uncomfortable doing, a little unfamiliar doing. And so I would encourage you guys out there, and this is how I live my life and run our business is I'm going to do things that are uncomfortable for me to do if it makes me successful. And so, whether it's in our personal life or business. And so, I don't know, how to buy on Craigslist, but I guarantee you, we're going to figure it out, because for us to be successful in the long term, we're going to have to do things.
And Danny?
Yeah, the power of one. That's really the answer. I shook a guy's hand 5 years ago and said, "Hey, we're going to figure out how to buy 100 cars a month." And he goes, "Okay." And you just kind of one foot in front of the other. The first month we bought like 5 or 6, and we figured it out. And we made a little form that said, "Cool, we should probably make a customer packet when we buy a car." And then we took the next step, and we said, "Well, how do we scale this?" And we thought about what kind of person, if we were going to hire somebody, should be in the seat. We quickly figured out salespeople aren't the right people to sit in that seat in the vehicle buying center because they want instant gratification, and they're not. They're focused on selling the customer and not the product of the acquisition. So we found out that like the heart of a teacher is a better communicator, and so we found people that aligned with that better. And it's just one foot in front of the other. And slowly you kind of get better and better. And I'm still on a journey, right? My goal is 200 cars a month, and I'm averaging about 100, 120. So I've still got a ways to go.
We decided to put one podcast in front of the other, starting in November 2018. And anybody that's listening, we really appreciate it. Jeff, how can people?
I think that's the number one thing, the theme I take from this, guys. The reason we're at convention and the reason we do this is to learn from each other, right? I don't know what I don't know. And that's the biggest thing about these conventions and getting with other dealers. I see a dealer who's doing it right or doing something different than I am, and I'm like, I can do that. They're doing it. I've seen the map to success, and that's what the podcast is all about. We've got 180 episodes on there. Luke and I are dealers. We do it for fun. So subscribe. Please leave us a review. It helps boost our rankings in the algorithm situation. So jump on the podcast. This episode will come out in 2 weeks, and we've got a lot of other great stuff. Presenters. Brett Carmichael was on there a couple of weeks ago, so listen to his. It was awesome. But yeah, please subscribe and review podcast.
See you next week.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks, guys.